Hello and welcome to another episode of Dark Natter. My name is Count Dracula and I'm the newest resident in the Hall of Pain. I must say, it is rather pleasant down here, not a sliver of sunlight to be seen. Speaking of things that aren't very bright, here comes Dark Natter co-host Liam. Hey Drac, how's it going, buddy? Oh, you know, the days suck, and so do the nights if I have my way. Okay, Drac. So I was just wondering, actually, mate, if you had any more of that, that red drink you gave me at a Halloween party. I've had a deep, unquenchable thirst for it ever since. See, I told you he wasn't very bright. Of course, Liam, follow me.
Liam, what are you doing? You know you're not supposed to be down here fraternising with the inmates. I mean, the residents.
Yeah, I know. I was just hungry, that's all. Really hungry.
Hungry? The Lost Boys said you already ate all of the rice and noodles.
Noodles? Rice? Ah, I thought it was supposed to be worms and maggots.
Look, just put that red drink down and come here and record the show with me. It's going to be a long one today. And Dracula, you get back to your your suite.
Okay, but, oh God. Just look, you've got to try some of this red drink first. It's delicious.
All right, fine. Ooh. That's not bad at all. Right, well, look, we've got to go. Dracula, we're not supposed to be down here, so you just take care of yourself. Bye.
They'll be back. You can count on it. As in, Count Dracula, count on it.
That was very good.
Good.
That was a good opening skit, wasn't it?
I think so.
I enjoyed that. You did a very good, convincing portrayal of the Count.
I try.
You tried and you succeeded. I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to hear what happens next.
Yeah, I suppose we've got to think about that now, haven't we?
Yeah, we'll have to write something. But, this could evolve into, maybe that'll end up becoming more popular than the main show.
Could be a major motion picture.
Yeah, watch the space. But in the meantime, we're here to present Dark Natter, the podcast where we take your favourite works of dark fiction and chop, slice and hack them apart, and then hack them again and again and again, and don't stop hacking until there's barely anything left.
You sick fuck.
So how he's kind of relevant to what it was meant to be. I'm John Richter.
And I'm Liam Martin.
And we are, as you have gathered by now, going to talk about a favourite dark fiction topic to ascertain whether it is worthy of a place in hallowed, blood-soaked halls of the Hall of Pain. You sort of cut off a bit. Are you alive?
Yeah, I should have cleared my throat first.
It sounded like you'd had a bit of an episode then.
It was, yeah.
A powerful laugh.
Powerful stuff.
What's going to be a powerful show, because just like last year, we've gone for like a bit of a what would you call it? A special, a binge watching, franchise demolishing, draining, life sapping,
really
special.
Draining. Yeah, really draining.
Well, last year it was Halloween. We did the Halloween special and we watched all the Halloween movies, all 11 of the bastards. This year, it's your turn. It's your pitch. So I'm going to shut up and let you explain it.
Well, you will be tuning into this, I hope, on Friday the 13th. So we thought it would only be fitting to discuss, for me, to pitch to John, whether or not Friday the 13th deserves a place in the Hall of Pain.
Do you mean the franchise featuring hockey mask wearing psycho Jason Voorhees?
That's exactly what I mean.
That's good, because otherwise that would have been a bit of a confusing start.
It would have been, yeah. Friday the 13th.
And there are 12 of them.
There are 12 of them, yeah.
We've gone a step further than last year. We've watched back to back 12 arguably quite ropey films, and we've done it all for you. And we'll talk you through what we thought of it. It's funny, isn't it, though, that there's 12. You would then there's not been one for over a decade, because the last one was the remake that came out in 2009. You would think that Friday the 13th was crying out for a 13th film.
Absolutely. Do you know what? Funnily enough, I'm not the brightest man, as we established on the skit intro.
No.
I didn't even think of that, but you're right. Why? That is an absolute tap-in. Why would you not do a 13th?
You'd call it, well, in like a trendy modern way, you could imagine it being called Friday 13.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Something like that. And then then the logo would be like, the 1 would be a knife, and the 3 would be a several knives arranged into a 3 or something.
Apparently, though, basketball player, I don't know if you read this, NBA player LeBron James wants to produce a Friday the 13th reboot.
Well, what I did read, although not in minute detail, so I'll probably get all the specifics wrong, but who cares, is that the reason that they've stopped making them is there's some sort of rights dispute between like the original director and the original producer. Yeah. So it's like they're sort of feuding over the rights to Jason Voorhees and and his iconic hockey mask.
It sounds like there's interest then in doing another one, although it'll probably be another reboot.
Well, it's a weird franchise, isn't it? Because we'll get on to the a bit more of the specifics of the films, but they're basically all quite cheaply made shite.
Yeah.
And yet they've been really successful. Like Jason, we're two British blokes, we're not American, and yet this character, like, he's definitely a kind of globally recognisable character, isn't he? Jason Voorhees, the
definitely.
big guy with a hockey mask. And to the point where I would say he's equally as famous, if not maybe even more so, than Michael Myers from Halloween.
I would agree with that. And actually, apparently it's the highest grossing slasher series of all time until the recent Halloween rebooted sequel came out. I think that's right. So
I read the same thing. Yeah, that they're kind of vying for the top spot, the two long-running ones.
So it definitely is due another film, because if it wants to take its crown back. But yeah, it's really successful. But as we'll get to in a bit, not always deservedly so.
Not necessarily good. And it started. So I think the first Halloween came out in, I think it was 1978, the John Carpenter masterpiece.
That's right. Yeah,
discussed at length last year. Check out the episode in the archives. And that is a proper, it basically invented the slasher genre, whereas Friday the 13th is literally just a rip-off of Halloween. The first movie came out in 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham, and it was made because of the success of Halloween. So it is meant to be it was made as a bit of a rip-off, really.
Yeah.
But then somehow it was popular, so they made another one and another one. And another one.
And Christ, yeah.
So there are literally 12 movies that we will painstakingly trawl through. But shall we? Is there any more generalities? Maybe we should talk about loosely. The premise is Jason Voorhees was a young boy who drowned at a summer camp at Camp Crystal Lake.
Yep.
And he drowned because of the negligence of the, what are they called, like camp counsellors?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Whatever, they're like voluntary, I don't know, like randy teens who go to a camp to, I don't know, do a crap job of babysitting kids. So he drowned. And he was deformed, I think, like sort of he had like a bulgy head.
Yeah.
If that's the technical term.
Not sure, but it'll
bulgy
do.
Head syndrome. And then his mum... Well, now we're getting into the specifics of the first film. So anyway, Jason Voorhees drowned, and then the premise of the franchise is that for some reason he's come back and seems to be some sort of immortal, unkillable Hulk, monster brute for whatever bollocks reason.
Are we talking specifically now about the first film?
Well, I suppose I was going to cover a few generalities before we kind of segued into the specifics of the first one. But you're right, the first one is where all the backstory is established anyway, isn't it? So let's dive into that. 1980, Friday the 13th. Kevin Bacon's in it.
Kevin Bacon,
young Bacon in like a really little bit part.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for him to meet his untimely demise. Yeah.
Does he get stabbed through a mattress from underneath? His was
probably the best killing, I think, in the first film.
Yeah, because it's really low budget and shit, isn't it? Like, even the effects are crap and the whole thing's just not very good. But it looks really dated. So it's like between the first film and the sixth film is literally only 6 years. So it's like spanning 1980 to 1986. Yeah. And yet by the sixth one, it sort of feels like a modern. Obviously, it's still got elements of datedness, but it feels like a modern film.
You could really see how times, just society in general, had changed. Yeah, definitely. I don't know if that's a cultural thing or just a budgetary thing. I'm not sure, but yeah, you definitely can see the change. Very old-fashioned. The
first one is really. It seems like it's from the 70s almost.
Yeah,
well, it nearly was, but. And go on, Liam. Tell us what happens in first one.
Basically, you see the very beginning. A bit like Halloween. You kind of see through the killer's eyes. You see a couple of camp counselors go off to get it on, and suddenly they're confronted by an unknown stranger who stabs them both. And this is the year after Jason drowned in the lake. So then it's pretty much, right, this camp, there's something going on here. Let's close it down until sometime later when, a new group decides to move in there and kind of reopen Camp Crystal Lake. And, of course, the killings start again. So,
And the big twist, spoiler alert for the rest of this podcast, if you did have any desire to watch any of the Jason movies and you don't want them spoiling, you might be surprised to learn the first movie does have a twist in it.
It does,
kind of unexpected twist. Is, in essence, Jason's not in it at all.
No.
And the killer is his mum.
Yep.
So, like, Mrs. Voorhees, who's this, like... I don't know, she's got like nice hair and she's just like this kind of middle-aged like suburban housewife.
Well, apparently, so the lady who played her was Betsy Palmer, and I thought she looked really good in it. She kind of looked a bit unhinged, but also you could believe she wasn't. You could believe that she was like on your side, but then she did the unhinged thing very well as well. And she used to, she was like an actress, for many years. She dated James Dean, apparently.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And apparently she only took the role because she wanted a replacement for her car. So she was paid $1,000 a day for 10 days work, which
fair enough.
Which she used the money just to buy a new car. That was it. And she thought it was shit.
Because it was.
Yeah, because it was.
Because it is.
But I think she ended up kind of embracing it because it made like $60 million at the box office on a budget of like $500,000. Yeah, so...
Yeah, a massive success.
And as you say, Kevin Bacon's in it.
I don't know if there's any other famous people in it. I mean, there's such a high body count in this series that, the chances are that there's a few recognisable ones, isn't there?
There's a few, yeah.
Well, Corey Feldman's in one of them.
Corey Feldman and...
Young lad.
The same one, actually, Crispin Glover's in as well, from Back to the Future.
Oh!
Yeah.
There's been a lot of young actors getting knocked off by, well, as we say, not by Jason until at least the sequel. So the first one, it's Mrs. Voorhees,
and that's the amazing thing. Yeah, it's not Jason, and yet when you think of it, it's one of those things, if you've never seen the Friday the 13th movie, I think it would be, and you watch the first one just going in blind, I think you would genuinely be quite shocked by the end because... I
was. I had no idea. I was completely...
I didn't when I was younger and saw it now.
Stunned that he wasn't in it.
Because he's such an iconic character. I know we say that a lot, but he is. He's such a recognisable character. But not in it at all. Albeit, he is kind of in it at the end because there is
there's that weird jump scare where the last... What do they call it? Is it the last survivor? What's the term they use?
The final girl.
The final girl.
Yeah.
She gets away. She chops off Mrs. Voorhees' head with
Which actually, can I just say, I thought they kind of missed a trick here, because wouldn't it be more kind of poetic almost if that she drowned her?
Agreed. And there was almost there was sort of a retcon of that in one of the sequels anyway, where she like comes up out of the water. Do you remember? And it was like, hang on a minute, I thought she had no head. But anyway, and then the whole kind of canon, the chronology of these films is absolute fucking bollocks.
Absolute bullshit. Like,
it's so funny.
They gave up, like, almost
trying to even in a hilarious way. So I think as the films get more stupid, they get better.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, yeah. I mean, sorry, you were saying about the first one. Yeah, the end, the final girl, she's in a boat. She survived. Mrs. Voorhees chopped her head off. And then suddenly you get a jump scare at the end where the body of Jason Voorhees, this kind of mangled, rotting body, comes up out of the water and drags her in. Only it didn't really happen, because she then wakes up in the hospital and it's like, what about the boy? And they're like, there was no boy. But it kind of leaves you with that feeling, is he still alive? Was that a hallucination? Or
like if they'd have not done that bit where she woke up in the hospital and they just ended on Jason grabs her and drags her into the water, that would have been a decent shock ending.
Probably would have been better, wouldn't it?
Segued into introducing the character.
I agree.
But instead it's left as like, did she hallucinate the bot? It doesn't really make any sense.
Apparently,
it's a bizarre film.
It was... So the guy who did special effects, Tom Savini, quite a famous guy.
He's really famous, isn't he?
Done loads of good. He was a sex machine from Dusk Till Dawn, wasn't he?
With the gun
cock,
penis.
Apparently, I think I read that he saw Carrie. Have you seen the movie version of Carrie, the old one?
Yes.
The big jump scare at the end where the hand comes out of the grave. He'd seen that and was kind of inspired by that. So I think they kind of added that bit in last minute. I could be wrong there, but that's my understanding of it.
And I think I sort of slagged off the effects earlier. It's hard to explain. They're not bad.
No.
They're just really low budget.
Yeah.
So he's done a good job with what he was working with. And some of the kills are quite satisfyingly grisly and gruesome. It's just got that sort of very dated thing with a lot of older low budget films where the editing's really choppy.
Yeah.
And it just feels like kind of amateurish, and it just isn't shocking at all, because we're completely desensitised to horrific violence now, because we've all been watching horrible films. Because these films created the genre, we've all been watching disgusting horror slasher movies for decades.
Yeah.
So the old ones are just completely tame, aren't they?
Yeah, they are really. Although, I mean, you can make the argument that they're slightly scarier because they're not as in your face. Maybe there's a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, certainly one thing that these older slashers have, sort of pacing-wise, which I really like, is they're always about 90 minutes long.
Yes.
And they always spend about 50 minutes where not much happens.
Yeah.
And I like that. And then there's a kind of flurry of activity, and then there's an ending. And it's like, sitting ploughing through all these films, like at the start of, oh my God, I've got to watch 12 Jason movies. This is a bit daunting. But they're all over quite quickly.
They are, yeah.
It's not like they're hard to watch. They're just easy, mindless. So,
I agree. Actually, I think the pacing. I think it was a few people criticised it for being a bit too slow, but I didn't really find that with the first one. And I liked the twist at the end. I thought it was good.
Yeah. So to be fair, as a sort of cultural touchstone of a big franchise that everyone's heard of, the fact that it's weird that he's kind of not in it, and the fact that it has got a legitimately good twist, and for young bacon, I'd say Friday the 13th, the first one, is a, decent, worth a watch.
It's a decent effort, yeah. It's not as good as Halloween. Definitely not. Halloween, I think, is just in a league above, but it's a decent slasher movie, yeah.
There was just one other thing, actually, is it's, obviously Halloween, another thing in its favour is Halloween has got an amazing, iconic, our favourite word, iconic theme tune. The John Carpenter amazing ace soundtrack to all his films that he does himself. Halloween is no exception. But Friday the 13th doesn't have a recognisable theme tune that I could hum. I don't know if anyone would disagree.
It's got the... I can't really do it, but
it's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to say. Although I don't think many people would kind of recognise it as a tune, it does have this theme that runs through literally like all the films had it. Like they kept it that same kind of like breathing based kind
yeah,
of.
it's
I'll try
hard to
and
do,
find
but-
it. I'll try and cut it in if I can find it anywhere.
I've seen. I'm sure they've like spoofed that in, like some like scary movie or something as well. So it's quite a well known.
Well, maybe it is more well known than I thought then, but I just didn't realise that Friday the 13th. Jason had his own like theme. It's not even a theme tune.
I suppose, it's not like Halloween had. It's the actual soundtrack, isn't it? Is really good. This is just more of a sound effect, I suppose. But
yeah,
it's quite recognisable.
Well, then because we've got a lot to get through, the second one is weird again because this time they do introduce Jason.
Yeah,
they completely cock up the chronology because now he's older and grown up and massive. And that doesn't really make sense. That means the first one must have been set longer ago. Doesn't really... They hand-wave that away.
Because the first one, I think, is set 20 years after he drowned.
It's not... So he's theoretically has had time to grow up by then.
He died in 1958, apparently, and they reopened the camp in, 1980.
But it's not even clear... Well, I suppose the second film strongly implies that he's not a supernatural being.
No.
He's just literally, he didn't die.
Yes.
And he's been living there secretly ever since.
Yeah.
And he's got like a shrine in his, he's knocked up a house out of bits of wood and it's all crappy and, scary, scary hillbilly kind of cannibal type trope. And he's got his mum's severed head from the first film and he's kind of worshipping that.
Yeah.
But you don't see his face throughout the film, but that's not because he's got it hidden under a hockey mask, because the hockey mask still doesn't come into it.
No.
So
again,
2 films no hockey mask is unbelievable.
He sort of has like a bag over his head, doesn't he?
just like a sack,
just
a cloth bag tied round his neck.
Well, that was
that's weird.
No, I know, and for something that recognisable, it's just mad, isn't it? That it was, well, spoiler alert, it was the third film that you first see it. But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? That it took 3 films for him to get, well, for Jason to be in it, and B, for the third film to have his hockey mask. It's madness.
But other, that aside, it does quickly devolve into the typical formula of there are some teens at the camp.
Yeah,
camp counselors. They're talking about the legend of Jason, and then they all get knocked off one by one by him, and that's the...
They're on about reopening the camp again. It's like, fuck's sake, just give it up, guys.
just demolish the place. And I wrote down, so this film did have a couple of... there was one or two really good scares in it, considering how old it is, and there's one or two just hilarious... There's a bit near the beginning where they drive into the camp. I can't remember which ones it is. I saw so many teens getting murdered over this period. They're all blurred into one. And it cuts to, I don't know, something like a scene of, it's the girl from the first film gets murdered at the beginning, doesn't she?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so whether it's that, I can't remember. But it cuts back to some of the teens driving to the camp, and when it that thing where you cut to someone telling a funny story and all you do is you catch the last sentence and then everyone laughs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he says, then he wiped his ass with the rabbit. And they all... What on earth is going on in that?
You just really want to know the rest of the story.
Yeah, but we never found out. And then there is that bit that I messaged you about because I was laughing my head off. Maybe it was clearly just me. Where there's a little cute dog. I don't even know what kind of dog it is. Like one of them long-haired, cute little ones. What are they?
I don't know.
Schnauzer or something. I don't know. I'm making it up. Little cute dog called Muffin. And one of the annoying girls is like, "Oh, Muffin, where have you gone, Muffin?" And of course, Muffin's got, chopped to pieces. And did we see quite a graphic picture of a chopped up dog? And it's like, oh God, you've gone a bit too far there, Jason. But then, right at the end of the film, when there's the final girl, and then and actually the boyfriend survives as well, so he's still going at this point, and they've at that point they've incapacitated Jason, or they think they've killed him. They actually look under his sack, and then there's that you assume you're going to see his face, but you don't see it. So it just shows the guy going, oh my God, which is a bit insensitive. So then they kind of leave Jason there. they go back to one of the cabins to try and, phone the police, and the phone lines are not working, whatever. And then they hear this noise outside, like footsteps, and it's like, oh no, it's, Jason must have recovered and he's come for us again. And they're kind of in there, backs against the wall, holding a pitchfork or whatever it is, ready to take him on. And then I'm sure the doorbell rings, or there's a knock on the door. So it's like, oh, what's this going to be? And you're kind of expecting maybe it's not going to be Jason, it's going to subvert your expectation and it'll be someone else. So then the guy goes and he opens the door, and it's the dog. And he's like, Muffin! And it's like, wait a minute. A, we've seen that dog dead. Did they forget? And B, how did it ring the doorbell? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But, and then to be fair, there's then a legitimately good jump scare where Jason smashes through the window, bagless, and you see his horrible, deformed, twisted face. Yeah. And then, freeze frame, end of film. I thought that was quite a cool ending.
Well, you see, she wakes up in an ambulance and she calls out for a boyfriend, but he's not there, so we assume he's dead. So again, it's like, what, she imagined that? Or
yeah,
it's the same as the first one. It's like, just, I don't know.
Just bizarre.
But quite a good jump scare, and also quite a funny bit, with the dog Muffin.
And there were some horrible bits, I remember there being just a bit where, I can't remember, is it them two, where she sort of says, she kind of says to him, there's someone in this room, there's someone in the room, and there is, and it's a mutated monster with a bag on his head, and there he is, and that was quite scary to me, this idea of you slowly realising that there's someone in a room, in a dark room, that's quite chilling.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
So,
we'd probably, I wanted to mention Crazy Ralph, the character, he's in the first two films. He's basically... Is
he like the go-to town idiot, town drunk kind of thing?
Who, whenever the camp counsellors go, he warns them. He's like a harbinger of doom. It's kind of like, oh, stay away, you're going to die. You're all going to die. And Jason knocks him off as well in the second one. But he gets killed. They kind of parodied that in the cabin in the woods. There's an actual...
I can't remember.
Yeah, there's an actual kind of harbinger of doom that's obviously kind of must be based on that. But he's quite a funny character.
It's one of those things where it's like a massive trope, but also it's a trope because it's like these tropes are established by old films. So I'm not sure which came first, the trope or the Friday the 13th movie that featured the trope.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I've not seen it before that, so yeah, maybe it did.
Sort of like a weird, like a comfort blanket. Here we go, a town crazy drunk guy who's predicting that they're all going to die. There we go.
There is also...
I can relax
there's
now.
Another survivor in part 2 as well, Ted Bowen, who's like that really geeky guy who's like a big joker. Like the first 4 films, maybe more, there's always like a Joker character.
But like a real over-the-top...
Yeah, like the jock, the, promiscuous
one-dimensional
girl.
stereotypes. Yeah, there's a jock, a promiscuous girl, a
Joker
/ Joker.
And this guy, Ted Bowen, and he's just at the bar. He survives, the nerd survives, so good on him.
Oh, I think I know which nerd you mean now.
Yeah,
actually.
He was really quite distinct.
Whereas I wrote down, so in the third film, which is where the hockey mask finally makes an appearance, in a really understated, we don't see him acquiring it. He just has it on. Well, for no reason.
The guy who has it is the Joker in the third film, Shelley Finkenstein.
Sorry. And I wrote down, the pathetic loser guy is such a pathetic loser that it's funny. Because at one point, he gets introduced to his date. They're picking up, there's a couple and then
that's right,
he's their friend and they introduce... And his date, gets into the car, looks at him and he just goes, sorry. Apologises for himself.
And it's his hockey mask, and I think it must be. I can't actually remember. I watched so many in such a short space of time, but I think it's after he kills him, he sees it and takes it.
Well, I mean, that's quite an honour then for that character, isn't it? Yeah. That he spawned the hocky mask. There was one thing I wrote down. Biker gang subplot is quite
amazing,
good.
Yeah. What a gang.
Two groups to decimate. Yeah, again, when gangs get portrayed in old things, they're just, groups of young people who are just horrible for no reason.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's just like three of them in it, like two blokes and a woman, and they're like, "Hey, asshole, we're gonna steal your wallet, and there's nothing you can do about it." It's like
They're just like the most 80s gang, aren't they? That cliche 80s gang. It's
with like leather jackets,
yeah,
and studs everywhere, and they all get horribly murdered.
One thing I noticed as well, not much nudity compared to the first two films. That was probably one, and the reason I'm bringing this, not because, I'm saying...
Because you were disappointed, that's what you're trying to say, isn't it?
It seemed to me that the first two films, one of the big selling part, it was like sex, violence, and yeah, basically that's it.
Having said that, the group of teens in the first two films were more wholesome. So
they
what
were
I mean by
actually
that is,
compared to some of the later ones, yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote down that in the first two films they're all quite nice to each other. They're like a group of friends who then got tragically murdered by a old woman and a kid. But then in this third one, we're getting into like the teens are a bit more unpleasant and a bit more like selfish and a bit more like doing drugs and more in, hey, let's have sex, hey, let's do drugs, which, becomes completely the cliche. So
some of the later ones, the weed references, like it's just it's ridiculous.
It's like the people making these films decided that all young people do is smoke weed.
And try to have sex, which
probably
true.
That one's probably true. But yeah, so it is a bit of a weird kind of juxtaposition, isn't it? Like the first two films have got quite nice people, but who are quite gratuitously naked for half the film. And then in some, maybe... But then I don't know, it kind of pops back in later films. It's like they couldn't quite decide.
It does. It just surprised me because it just seemed to me like they were so successful, the first one in particular. I don't think the second one did that well, actually. But yeah, I'm just surprised they didn't go like, right, let's just get as much nudity as we can, as much violence as we can. And, that's enough to sell the movie. But yeah, it just surprised me, that was all.
And then the ending, they go for that unexpected jump scare ending again. With this time, it's Jason's mum's corpse coming out of the water. Yeah. Even though last time we saw her, she didn't have a head. Doesn't make any sense, but... whatever.
I'm not sure if it's this one or the second one where one of the girls uses the mother's head to like pretend to be the mother to kind of control Jason.
Oh, yeah, that's the second one. I think that's the
second one, isn't it? But we see that a few times in the series. Yeah,
people trying to sort of control him.
We see it in the next film. It's 4. I've got it down here. Yeah, where they try. Well, yeah, actually 4 is quite good. Where they dress up as either Jason or his mum to kind of try to get him on side, yeah.
And again, it barely makes any sense. But yeah, the fourth film, amusingly called The Final Chapter, it was not. If only it was the final chapter.
Yeah, Christ.
And it's got a young Corey Feldman in it.
That's right,
the guy he's in Gremlins. He did the Dancing on Ice not so long ago. I've always had a soft spot. He's in the Goonies.
I like him. Yeah, I like him.
I think he's ace. And
the Lost Boys. Yeah.
Well, again, I think he shaves it. He's a very resourceful young man. He ends up shaving his head because Jason is a bald bloke, and I think he's trying to trick Jason into thinking he is his like younger self.
Yeah.
And then somehow the tricking devolves into him brutally hacking Jason to bits with a machete.
Yeah.
So he does kill him, doesn't he?
He does kill him in
the fourth film.
And
but then it's implied that he then becomes him.
Yeah, because you kind of see his face, don't you? And he looks like he's obviously been quite traumatized and maybe quite enjoyed killing him, or he's just become a bit of a psycho. But yeah, I didn't mind the fourth one. I thought it was okay. Crispin Glover's amazing dancing in it.
That's true. That's very true. It was okay.
Oh, one thing I did see, there's a guy in the fourth one, kind of a mysterious guy who you see he's gone to Camp Crystal Lake to look for his sister, who was one of the counsellors in the second movie. It's like she's like the first one you see after the girl from the first film gets killed. She's there with her boyfriend. And the trouble is, though, it's like, and I think this is a problem up until this entry, is all of the characters, all of the final girls, all the supporting characters, there'd not been one single memorable one. Even now, I couldn't tell you, like, hardly any of their names.
Yeah, it's not like Laurie Strode in Halloween, a really strong character, recognisable actress, really good performance. What's her name again? Jamie Lee Curtis. It's just a series of fodder, crap teens, and there's no continuity at all. Like, I don't think a single actor appears more than once, except for the first girl from the first film who gets killed at the start of the second one.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. That could have been quite a good callback, and it could have been, that's quite interesting. But the characters are so forgettable that you just don't give a shit. So that's I think the biggest problem with the entire series. There weren't many characters at all that you really actually cared about.
Yeah, and I remember reading like Roger Ebert giving one of the films a bad review, and him, I think it was him, literally Roger Ebert himself, sort of went to a cinema and he couldn't get his head around this whole culture of like young people going woo and like cheering when people were killed and like we want some boobs and all this kind of, and I guess it's a weird thing. It's like it's definitely a negative. You don't care about the characters at all, so you don't sympathise with them, so you're not bothered when they get murdered by the villain. But weirdly, that became a positive because cheering for Jason murdering them became funny, and that's part of the success. It's like a weird fluke in a way. It
just doesn't make for a particularly scary film, though, does it?
No, correct.
And that's the problem with. I don't think many of these films, whilst they had moments, are like, oh, that was quite good, and they're not that scary.
Yeah, agreed, because you've no sense of, if you're not bothered at all about the people that he's killing, then that definitely kind of detracts from its ability to. It
is hard, isn't it?
Well, that leads us into number 5.
Oh God, this had a hilarious bit in it.
It was unintentionally funny throughout, wasn't it? I wrote down every scene with the police is incredible. Yeah, as well as the mayor. Like, it was just this real over-the-top, like, Jason Voorhees is dead, goddammit! Like, you asshole! Like, they're all just really angry all the time for no reason. And then...
Oh, God.
No, please, go shoot.
Just the bit at the beginning where the kind of... So they're at... It's Corey Feldman's character of Tommy Jarvis is kind of grown up now. So this is like the first time, really... we see
there's been any continuity.
Yeah, and I didn't, and I liked that. I didn't mind that because I do think he was probably the first, as I say, kind of supporting character that was in any way memorable.
Yeah, and it's sadly not Feldman, but we did get a flashback to young Feldman, so we got a cameo.
So he's grown up and he's in a kind of. He's in kind of a halfway house, isn't he, for sort of, troubled teens, because obviously he's gone through his
PTSD or whatever from his experiences with Jason. One thing that I failed to point out is it's in, I think, the third one where Jason's invincibility credentials start to become established. I forgot to mention that. So he's not in the first one, as we said. In the second one, he's a big, hard, big hulking, monstrous brute. But it's not, he's clearly quite sort of tough to kill. But in the third one, at one scene, I think he takes an axe to the head and is hung with a noose and doesn't die. So it's like, without any explanation or any logic, we're into now, he's kind of invincible.
Sort of, it's still kind of somewhat kept, like, it's not overtly invincible. It's like...
Yeah, he is meant to be a real living man who is killed at the end of the fourth film, and in this film he is dead and his ashes have been... his body's been cremated, according to the angry mayor.
And so there is a bit of a twist in this film. I just want to say, though, so he's in this halfway house for kind of like troubled teens, and there's this one guy in it, I think he's kind of a big guy, Joey, I think his name was. And he's a bit odd, and he's going up to this other guy, trying to give him some chocolate or wanting to play a game with him or something.
Yeah, I think he's offering everyone chocolate bars, in case we couldn't tell that he was meant to be a stereotypically overweight young man. He's a big fat guy eating a chocolate bar and offering chocolate bars that he's got stuffed down his pants to the other characters.
And this other character, this like real psycho called Vic, he's like chopping wood.
He's chopping wood really angrily.
Absolutely, really angrily. Anyway, the guy eventually pisses him off so much, he turns around, the guy literally just hacks him to death with the axe. It's the most insane jump, isn't it?
And that guy is not Jason.
No.
That's barely investigated that's barely a thing. It's almost like the police are like, oh, what a tragedy, oh, what a shame he got chopped up. And yet, most films, a bloke murdering another bloke with an axe because he offered him a chocolate bar, that would be quite a big deal, worthy of a film. Just gloss over that.
So ridiculous.
Weird. Stupid.
I think by 5 I was a little bit...
Jaded,
yeah. I was a little bit done with the films by this point.
Well, I was too. So yeah, number 5, load of bollocks.
But again, an interesting twist. It wasn't actually Jason, was it?
And yeah, it was like... Well, that explained why they had the brutal killing at the beginning, or this was completely stupid. But the paramedic who turned up at the scene was the father of the dead kid.
Yeah.
Was that right?
That's right, yeah.
He has a mental break and decides he's going to, I don't know, murder a load of other kids in some sort of retribution. So he adopts the Jason legend and dons the hockey mask. And it's almost like a Scooby-Doo moment, isn't it? When he finally dies and they take the mask off and it's like, oh my God, it's some bloke you literally don't remember from the start of the film. It was just so shit.
And I kind of feel like, though, with the next film, so part 6 is when I think the series transformed into just...
A parody?
Yeah. Properly supernatural, yeah.
Jason is just a ghost monster, invincible, thing, creature, but who cares? The fact that he was meant to have been cremated in the last one, we'll just ignore that. And it starts with, it's Tommy again, so he actually gets 3 films in a row, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's decided, different actor though again, they couldn't even, I understand why they couldn't get Feldman again, because he went on to actually be famous, the Burbs and everything, but they couldn't even get the shit actor from number 5 to be in it again, who's never been in anything else as far as anyway. So he's decided he's going to drive with his mate to a graveyard where Jason's buried and just dig him up to check that he's definitely dead.
Yeah.
Stupid. And then, so you get that amazing shot, don't you, of like a worm-riddled corpse?
Yeah.
Like his whole face is just worms digging into him. And then, does he stab him in the chest with something?
Like a big metal rod, but then lightning strikes it.
Brilliant.
And brings Jason back. So if he just left it, Jason would have been dead and buried.
But no, you had to go and stab him with a big metal rod. There's a moral there for us all.
And that's the first time it's like, no, this is like properly supernatural now. And there's a brilliant bit, I think it's after that, in fact, when you get the intro, and it's like a James Bond style intro, where they walk along and turn to the camera and shoot, but it's Jason like throwing a knife or something. It's brilliant.
Really suddenly becomes really funny. So exactly like you. Number 6 was when I went from, these films are pretty shit, this is hard going, I'm not enjoying myself that much now. And then number 6 was like, this is pretty funny. There was more brilliant...
It was good.
Yeah, literally the rotten worm-infested corpse just gets up and puts his hockey mask back on, and that's Jason. He's a grey, mouldy, dead body. He's not a man at all. Brilliant. And there was the police, again, absolute highlight in so many of these films.
Brilliant, yeah.
Do you remember the one who's got the laser scope on his gun? Which, by the way, I'm not sure police are allowed to just upgrade their own weapons because they want to, like buy it off Amazon. And he says he's like explaining the concept of a laser scope on a pistol, which doesn't really need explaining. And he goes, "Wherever the red dot goes, you bang." That was like brilliant.
It was really fun. There was a weird paintballing bit as well with like some nerds from some company doing like a paintball trip, and they just get killed, including one really crazy guy who actually, that's where Jason gets his big machete from. This crazy guy's like moaning about how this woman, got him out in paintball. It's just loads of really funny bits. But also there was one scene where there's the truck's kind of on its side and Jason's standing on top of it. And I just thought that was a really cool shot.
Brilliant.
It was like the burnt out truck and he's on top of it. So I thought it was genuinely quite a good fun. It was a good fun slasher film.
Funny, stupid, enjoyable slasher film. Shitloads better than all the others up to this point. And that was a good point you made actually about his machete. I do think Jason is more creative with his kills than Michael Myers. But Michael Myers is largely a stabber, isn't he? It's a lot of knife-based stabbing and pinning people against the wall with a knife. Jason's got harpoon gun things. He's got knives. We've had what else did he use to kill people? Obviously, there's the big machete. I think there's absolutely tons, and I can't think of any now. But
there's one in part 7. There's quite a funny one where there's this couple in a tent, having sex. He goes off to investigate. He gets killed, obviously. And then Jason bursts through the tent and she's in this sleeping bag. Oh, yeah. And he I think she closes the sleeping bag on herself and he just picks it up and just whacks it against the tree and that's her dead. I thought that was quite a funny one.
Just plops out of the sleeping bag dead. Yeah. But I did write number 7 seemed a bit ungory. Whether I somehow accidentally watched a slightly censored one.
I think it was actually censored. I think it was.
Interesting.
Because, they're pretty... The 7th one was fucking weird, actually. The psychic girl. Yeah,
it's got a psychic girl. Jason is so much of a rotten dead body that you can see, his spine and bones hanging out his back. Yeah. At one point, he gets unmasked and he just is a full-on monster.
Yeah.
Cool old-fashioned rubbery latex makeup or whatever. But and then it starts off with that scene where the girl is a young girl who's clearly got something psychic going on. She's upset because her dad has beaten up her mum.
Yeah.
So she rows out in a boat on the lake, presumably Crystal Lake or whatever. And then the dad comes out and he's like, "Oh, I didn't mean it, honey." But then she's so angry that her psychic powers caused the pier collapses and he drowns.
Yeah.
And then, so the whole film is about her getting this treatment from this doctor who is
a brilliant, great heel, yeah.
A weaselly scumbag doctor, and he's like, "I'm just trying to get you to realise your powers." And it doesn't even make any sense what he's trying to achieve, why he's so horrible, but he just keeps being horrible to her because he's trying to, if she's under more trauma, her powers will manifest.
And he's trying to do it to make money, isn't he? Just to...
Somehow. Or something. And then does she end up bringing Jason back using her powers by mistake?
Yeah, because she thinks she can sense her dad in there, so she was really angry and she accidentally brings Jason back from the lake.
Because he's at the bottom of the lake, because that's how they kill him in number 6.
6 one, yeah.
So he comes back.
Can I just say, that we talk about, the kind of the different character stereotypes. In the Wikipedia entry to this, it says about the group that goes to stay by the lake. The group includes Michael's cousin Nick, Preppy Russell, which is the guy that actually wears a sweater around his neck, and his girlfriend Sandra, Ben and his girlfriend Kate, science fiction writer Eddie, Stoner David, Perky Robbie, Robin, Shy Maddie, and snobby socialite Melissa, who was a real bitch in it.
She was an absolute cow, wasn't she? And that...
Go on.
No, I was just going to say that sci-fi writer was ridiculous, stupid character, constantly going on about his books
I actually wrote down a quote from him, because when the snobby socialite kind of leads him on, and then she rejects him and says, I was only doing it to make this other guy jealous. And he's like, rejection? Okay, fine. I can take it. I've been rejected by some of the finest science fiction magazines in the continental United States. It's what the fuck you on about? It's just such a random bit.
Funny. And then, to kill him this time, she somehow summons the ghost of her dad. Even though he was a horrible wife beater, by the way, who's not nice. She summons him to, save her, and he's like, "Oh, I saved you, honey." You can't call it predictable. No. It's definitely a good, interesting
one of the wackier ones up until now. Apparently this was supposed to be, or they kind of wanted it to be, the Freddy versus Jason film.
Oh, and then so they had that idea for a long time, didn't they? The crossover.
They couldn't get because at the time they were owned by different, the rights were owned by different studios, and I think they ended up getting it. But it ended up kind of
Eventually.
being, it was described as Carrie versus Jason, which I thought was quite funny.
I'm just conscious, actually, one thing I forgot to do is say the directors of these movies. We should probably give them some credit, shouldn't we? So the first one, as we said, Sean S. Cunningham. Steve Miner did part 2 and 3, so that's 1981, 1982. Joseph Zito, 1984, so they're churning these out one a year. Part 5 called A New Beginning, 1985, Danny Steinman. 1986, Jason Lives, the one with our favourite one with the worm-infested corpse. That was Tom McLaughlin. And then we've just done 1988's Part 7, The New Blood, which was John Carl Buechler. And now we're into what I do think is a bit of a highlight, for me anyway, was Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan from 1989.
Ridiculous.
Directed by Rob Hedden. This was like, obviously I was expecting this to be stupid, and it just was really stupid. Well, one initial thought for me, there's a montage of New York in it, where it looks like an absolute shithole. There's like rats. It seems to be like there's barrels of toxic waste in alleyways, with rats swimming around in them, and that's what New York was like in the 80s, apparently. It's hilarious.
But I think, in fairness, like, when I was a kid, I did used to think of New York, probably because I saw this film, because I remember this is probably the first one I remember seeing when I was a lot younger. But yeah, I always had this idea of New York being like a really rough place full of gangs and graffiti and yeah, the beginning of this, addicts just shooting up in the alleyway after mugging someone like seconds before. It is just
really fun. Like, there was a few films where they're like the Turtles movie with like Casey Jones. Was that set in New York? That certainly made, it was set in some city that looked like a dump. And then Home Alone 2, where it's like, oh, kids are scared of the park.
Yeah.
Like, that was scary. There was quite a few films around that time that made New York seem like really terrifying, and you'd immediately get mugged if you went there. And then, doesn't somebody get mugged immediately when they finally arrive in New York City? There's a mugging within minutes of their arrival.
So literally, most of the film actually takes place on like a cruise liner going to New York, and
it's not even...
which Jason like hitches a ride on.
Yeah, somehow.
And so most of the killings and everything take place on the kind of the cruise liner. There's amazing 80s like rock chick doing like a guitar solo down below who gets killed with her guitar, I think. Yeah. But anyway, eventually they do make it to New York, like quite late on in the film, and literally, within seconds, they're mugged. The girl, the main kind of girl, is taken away, drugged,
isn't she injected with heroin,
almost raped and beaten, like literally.
And then Jason has to save her.
Yeah, which kind of made me think this was almost like a bit of a vigilante movie, like like, oh, these are the heroes. Like, actually, Jason's cleaning up the streets. We need someone like Jason to come in and. I don't know.
A no frills, honourable. Yeah, I think you've got a point there. There was one of the. Having said that, Muffin was the series highlight.
There was another one. Maybe
actually, are we going to say the same one? So the gag they're trying to do is one of the teens that's been established as a tough guy boxer. And we've already seen him like sparring with his mate. He beats up his mate. He's a tough guy. You know, he's not necessarily particularly nice, but he's still honourable. He's still a good guy, and he decides he's going to take Jason on this sort of rooftop. Yeah. And he starts punching him, and Jason's kind of backing away, getting punched. he is taking the hits, but he's not particularly fazed by it. But initially, it looks like this guy's landing some good shots.
It looks like he's having a good go of it.
And he's swinging away. And then you realise, it's doing that thing where he's getting tired. Yeah. And so he starts throwing his punches a bit slower. He's still smashing Jason in the face. I know this hockey mask must be made out of like titanium or something to not have broken. Punching him, he's flagging. It's like that Homer Simpson boxing thing when the opponent just collapses. But it keeps going. And they drag out this thing of him tiring and throwing slower and slower punches for so long. I reckon I was sat there for maybe 2 or 3 solid minutes. Like, imagine how long that is to just watch a guy punching another guy in the face. It's gradually slowing down, and you're just waiting for the inevitable moment when he can't throw. He can barely lift his hand, and then finally Jason punches him back, And obviously, you know what's going to happen. You know he's going to punch him and knock him out or kill him or whatever. But his head flies off and then falls down the side of the building, lands in a bin, and the bin slams shut.
It was
just absolutely incredible.
It was hilarious. I put when I was making notes. So this is just after, by the way, I made the note about them being mugged, drugged, raped, and beaten. Practically the next scene, I put boxer dude made a good go of it. ... He punched his head off.
I wrote down possible highlight of entire franchise: Jason punches a bloke's head off into a bin.
It's the best kill in the entire series, without doubt.
By miles. And then I wrote, you heard it here, folks. The best kill that occurs in Jason Friday the 13th, Part 8.
Yeah.
I wrote down as well, I felt a bit sorry for the uncle teacher who got drowned in a barrel. Don't know whether you did.
He was a bit of a nasty piece of work, though, wasn't he?
He wasn't great, but I don't think
he didn't deserve that, no.
Yeah.
But they did just leave him to Jason, didn't they, really? I was a bit harsh, actually.
Like, he hadn't actually done anything. Like, remember there's that girl who's trying to frame him for, like, being creepy, sleeping with the students.
Oh, yeah, that was quite
she tries to frame him for that, to set him up to blackmail him, and he rejects her and doesn't do it. Yeah. So I feel like, he's got some morals. Don't drown him in a barrel full of rats.
It was just quite funny that he pushed his niece into the lake to kind of cure her fear of
drowning or whatever it was. Yeah, that was a bit much. Good point.
Just made me laugh.
And I wrote down, I would have preferred to see him murdering more New Yorkers.
I think that's the point. Yeah.
I like New Yorkers. I don't mean to, but it's like, you know what I mean. Like, there's all these like sort
they
of
were really nasty pieces of work, weren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to see him do. I wanted to see less on the boat and more in Manhattan.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I quite enjoyed Manhattan though.
Yeah, thought it was best one since number 6. And when he dies, and you see him when he dies, he kind of turns back into the boy, the sad little boy. I kind of liked it. I thought it was kind of like, oh, poor Jason.
But yeah, he dies in like toxic waste, basically. Sewer full of toxic waste.
Yeah, flipping heck. And toxic waste thrown in his face. And
there's another dog fake out at the end. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah! What happened again? The dog...
They see... It was her dog from the boat, I think.
Does the dog just turn up?
I can't remember, but there's some dog fake out.
Muffin comes back.
Yeah.
It was Muffin. Muffin was the killer. Well, this roller coaster ride, if you thought we'd peaked weirdness with Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, the next one was 1993, so the first time we've got a 4-year gap. A bloke called Adam Marcus directed it, and it's called Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. And where do you even start to describe this pile of bonkers,
just
utter bollocks, basically? Like,
what
the fuck?
So the opening scene, I put... So there was, like, instant nudity. So it's like, right, they're going for it in this one. Albeit she's about to have a bath in this, like, disgusting bathtub. But it turns out...
Like
and then Jason's there. So they're back at Camp Crystal Lake. So what the fuck happened in Manhattan? I don't know.
Yeah, never mind. Gloss over that.
But it turns out the girl he's chasing at the beginning of the film is actually like, I don't know, an FBI agent or something. And there's a big group of...
A SWAT team,
basically.
Massive, like, to let a load of, whatever you call them, FBI or something. And they're there to take Jason out, aren't they, with, like, guns and rocket launchers?
And they blow him up, or they kill him, but his heart's still beating... And while he's in the morgue,
just to be clear, his heart's still beating on the floor on its own.
Yeah,
am I wrong? Oh no, or does the doctor take it out of him?
No, there is a bit where you see it beating on the floor, and then
it's like it's blown out of his body and landed on the floor, and it's still beating, just literally a disembodied heart.
And then the coroner. Anyway, they take the body in, and the coroner ends up eating the heart and becomes Jason.
Yeah, he's doing an autopsy. He's doing his little talking into a dictaphone, and he's like saying, "Oh, subject has been blown up, and is blah 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 blah." And then suddenly he starts taking the piss out, and he's like, "You're dead as hell." And then he picks up this heart, sees it start beating. We assume he's going to be horrified, as we are, at the sight of a dead man's heart beating. But no, he just shovels it down.
It's like it was
as if
talking to him, basically, wasn't it?
It's
like,
possessed him. It's like it's seduced him or some bollocks.
And the premise to this film is that for Jason to live again, he can only be killed, truly killed, as we've seen. He keeps surviving all the stuff. He can only be truly killed by a blood relative. And to live again, he would need to inhabit the body of a blood relative. And as it happens, he's got, I don't even know how they're related to him, but can you remember how they're related? Are they cousins or something?
I think he's got a sister.
Is it a sister?
Just never been established, but suddenly he's got a sister after all.
And her daughter and granddaughter, basically, he wants the baby as like a new host for himself, and he needs to kill the other two so as he can't be killed by them.
But none of this has been remotely established in any of the previous films. There's none of this body hopping, possessing people. I suppose it means it's interesting because it's a bit different, but it's just complete. It's like a person who'd never seen any of the previous films wrote a Jason script. To
actually kill him, the family member is the only one that can do it, a blood relative, with this kind of ceremonial knife that's like...
like who made that knife and why did they make it?
It's fucking weird.
Stupid. I did like... in the Camp Crystal Lake kind of area, it's that thing of like self-parody, self-awareness. They're trying to cash in on the fame of Jason. Yeah. So there's like a horrible woman who owns that diner. She's like, and people are saying, "Oh, I'll have a Voorhees burger and a side of Jason's fingers, please." Yeah. Like, it's quite funny. She is obnoxious, horrible woman. And Mr. X from the X-Files is in it as a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Which I liked because I like him.
And the thing about it is, so the coroner, basically, to get close to his family members, to kill them and, inhabit their bodies or whatever, he starts kind of possessing different people. So he's kind of done with one body, and then he kind of has to, vomit his heart into somebody else's body to become them, including her boyfriend, who's like a real slimy TV guy.
Yeah, he spends a while being Jason, but it just doesn't. It's just weird. It's like you say, instead of Jason with his hockey mask, you've got most of the film is just like this slimy corporate executive murdering people.
But one thing I will say about this one, I thought the special effects were really good.
Well, at the very end, when we finally do get Jason re-embodied, and he's big hulking monster with there's a guy, isn't it, Kane Hodder, who I think played him for quite a few of the films. Yeah. So by this point, you've almost got an established big butch Jason guy. And he finally gets... I can't remember how they kill him with the dagger, I think. Drop kick a dagger into him or something. Yeah. And there's these massive, Muppet hands that, come up out of the ground, claw him down into the earth. There was some really mad effects.
Just basically taking him, as the title suggests, taking him to hell. But there was some, when the police officer... past the Jason heart onto the boyfriend, you see him kind of just melting away, really good, disgusting sort of 80s, 90s special effects. There's some really gross special effects, basically. I really enjoyed it.
Gross out stuff from the golden era when...
I liked this film.
I liked many things in it, but I probably preferred the other couple slightly more. I think some weird bits of this film sort of weirdly took itself seriously, which slightly undermined the stupidity.
I agree with that, actually. It was a little bit more po-faced than some of the other recent ones, wasn't it?
And then at the very end, to your point about the evidently long-running desire to make this movie that they didn't make happen for another 10 years. At the very end, you see Jason's mask, it's just dust blown, it's on the floor, Jason's gone, he's been taken to hell. And then Freddy Krueger's hand comes up out of the floor, claw fingers and all, and just pulls the mask down into the earth. Why is Freddy Krueger in this film?
Really
out
weird.
Of nowhere at the end.
They must have been planning that crossover film
for ages.
Before it actually happened. Because the next film in the series, I think, is the worst one.
Well, it's funny, actually. I will confess that I watched Jason X, 2002's Jason X, Jason 10. James Isaac directed it. I watched that 8 years ago. And I didn't bother rewatching it because I just remember what a complete load of nonsensical bollocks it was. It's Jason in space.
It's Jason in space. Yeah, he's done Manhattan, he's done Hell, now he's in space.
And it's kind of so bad it's funny, but is it that funny to actually watch?
It was boring. It's basically like a sci-fi. So the beginning, again, he's just alive again. You know, he can't be killed. So what they try and do is they try to cryogenically freeze him, but the military wants to take him and experiment on him because, as they explain it, I guess this is their way of kind of explaining why he keeps coming back. They believe he's got regenerative cells, so the military obviously want that.
It's science.
But it's got the look of like a really cheap 90s TV sci-fi show. Do you know what I mean? It looks like almost like a made-for-TV movie, and it's just boring, really boring.
And even like some of that, I think I remember finding the sleeping bag. They recycle that sleeping bag joke of like him smashing a girl in a sleeping bag. But when I've watched that the first time, it made me laugh. But now I realise they just recycled it from an earlier movie in the franchise. So even that bit isn't as... does somebody get killed on a big drill and their body is like spinning round and round and round?
Yeah.
Does that happen? I seem to recall that happening. Which actually sounds... We're making it sound quite good to me. I might watch it again.
Well,
but no.
Yeah, and he becomes almost like a cyborg as well, because he
does. Yeah,
it's just
God, it's all coming back to me now. I mean, again, all these elements sound pretty good, but I don't recall being enamoured with Jason X. But then a year later...
Well, can I just say a couple more things about Jason
X? Please do. No, please do.
It's worth mentioning as well, actually, that he gets cryogenically frozen and is reawoken like 455 years later. So this takes place well in the future when society, they've abandoned Earth because of the pollution and whatnot. And they find, on an expedition to Earth, they find his body in someone else's body, and then it comes back to life. But there was one quite good kill, I thought, which is when one of the scientists that is working on him, he gets her, he shoves her face into like the cryogenic thing and then smashes it on the side, and I just thought that was quite a good gory kill. But that was the highlight of the film, I think.
It's hard to explain, isn't it, this concept of like there are a lot of people who would not derive any pleasure from watching someone get murdered in a film. So we are obviously weirdos, but there is something... It's kind of hard to explain, isn't it? But there is something satisfying about a character you don't give a shit about.
Yeah.
Who you kind of know is going to die, and you quite want them to die because they're just a one-dimensional, annoying stereotype, especially if they're one of the not very nice, selfish, entitled type rich kid ones. And it's quite fun watching them get murdered in these movies in creative ways.
She was actually all right, though, the one who got and I still liked it. But yeah, oh well.
And then we have 2003. Ronnie Yu had the honour of finally realising the dream of Freddy versus Jason. They actually made it happen. God love them.
And I'll tell you what, really enjoyed it. I remember when it came out, really wanting to see it at the cinema. I didn't actually, but it made a shitload of money. It made over 100 million.
Wow! And it's got Robert Englund in, hasn't it? It's like proper Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, it's his. I think it's his last one as Freddy. Yeah.
Again, confession time. These two films, just weirdly, I must have been into Jason at the time. I did watch them sort of back at the time. So I haven't rewatched this one, but I do remember enjoying it. And my lasting memory was Jason emerging from, I don't know, Camp the Lake, a lake. He's got Freddy's severed head in his hand. And it's like, oh, bloody hell, Jason actually did it. Jason won the battle. And then as he's walking towards the camera and kind of past the camera, Robert Englund's severed head just smiles and winks.
Yeah.
It's like he's still alive, but you can't kill Freddy Krueger that easily. And that implied that the rivalry was going to rumble on in the future.
It's kind of like, so Freddy's like the brains in the film, but Jason's like the brawn. So Jason, they have this like amazing scrap, and Freddy's like doing all this crazy shit to Jason, but he just can't kill him. But it's just, to be fair, I think this movie was good because of Freddy.
Yeah,
Because Krueger is really quite funny. There's an amazing bit in it when you see, I don't know whether it's in a nightmare or what, but you see young Jason, like curled up, scared. And Freddy calls him an ugly little shit. He's like... That's the thing, Freddy Krueger, not only, he's not just like pure evil, but he's also like really, just a really horrible, crude, disgusting...
In other words, he's not horrible just because of his terrible, vile acts. He's also just a really nasty person who insults people. He's just,
because he's always so
horrible
he's
that
like,
it's funny.
Hey, bitch, and so like, he's just really nasty. But I did laugh. He's like, you ugly little shit.
I remember kind of wanting Jason to win because he's the sympathetic character in it.
Yeah, he is.
Like you feel Jason's basically the good guy in this film. Freddy Krueger's the bad guy.
He definitely is.
Bastard. Lovable rogue Freddy Krueger.
But it is a fun, for me, this is what like a slasher. So it's not really, you're beyond being scared of these films by now. Although there's some okay like nightmare sequences. But it was a good, fun slasher, two icons coming face to face. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good fun.
It's like a sort of celebrity death match, but with a big budget kind of thing.
Yeah. The cast, though, they're like the oldest teenagers ever. I know that's always like a bit of a joke, isn't it, in films? But
they're all like 32 years old and pretending to be young people. That's quite funny. And this is one I would watch again, but I failed to beforehand, so I should revisit this.
You ugly little shit.
Any other observations about Freddy versus Jason?
No, I think we covered it there. I think you're right. I think Jason was kind of like in wrestling terminology would be the baby face, and Freddy was the heel, but still
the ultimate
not
heel.
Someone you'd want to wake up next to. But yeah, fun, just a fun film.
And then that leads us to finally, God, that's been an ordeal, is the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, directed by Marcus Nispel. And yeah, this was sort of
shit.
Soulless pile of shit, wasn't
massive.
it? Yeah.
That is the great way of describing it. Yeah, it was soulless. I mean, we talk about not caring about the characters in the early films. In this one, not only do you not care about them, you actively dislike them. And I guess that's maybe kind of the point where maybe they're going for the whole let's kill him off. But yeah, it was just shit.
Because Jason, it's hard to, this is really hard to explain, but in the Halloween movies and a lot of these Jason movies, because the killer, Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, is a lumbering, mute, kind of portrayed as a bit of like a simpleton, there's a weird, like, almost, you feel a bit sorry for them in a weird way.
Yeah. Well, Jason is there, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, he's like he's disfigured, his mum died, he may or may not have drowned, it's unclear. So there's an element of you kind of pity them. Whereas in this film, Jason, I didn't even care about Jason in this film.
No.
Because even he was just this big, horrible bastard for no reason. I didn't care about a single character in the whole movie.
I'm trying to think if it was... Because honestly, I watched these films like back to back pretty much. Was it this one where you see a flashback where he's actually getting bullied at Camp Crystal Lake, or was that Freddy versus Jason? I'm not sure.
I think the only flashback in this one was you see a flashback to his mum being killed by... Yes. Trying to kill a camp counsellor and being killed.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it was Freddy vs. Jason then.
I just couldn't muster up any... Like, by the end, the finale where they're trying to sort of kill... They do successfully, defeat him. I just wasn't bothered about anyone.
I completely agree.
The women are all horrible. I suppose the final girl is not a horrible person, but she's not particularly interested. And the men are just... Well, there's one particular guy, isn't there? The jock guy. He's so unpleasant that he's kind of hilarious.
I was going to say, he's probably the best thing about this film, purely because every time he's on screen, it's like, what's he going to do next? What a horrible... So basically, one guy, like the good guy in this film, is going to Camp Crystal Lake to look for his sister who's gone missing, which you see at the beginning. She got taken and her friends got killed. And he's just in a shop, like asking, "Oh, do you mind putting these posters up? I'm looking." And this other guy who owns the cabin that the new teens are going to, it's just a prick to him for no reason. Like, he's just looking for his missing sister. Like, why are you being such... Not even like, "Oh, I don't really care." Actively just being an arsehole to him. I just, honestly, it was actually quite funny.
Because it was so odd.
Yeah.
It was so odd. His reaction was so odd. And then the guy, it didn't make much sense that the guy who he was... The poor unfortunate bloke who's trying to look for his sister was absolutely enormous, like a real stacked like muscle man, and yet he's behaving all kind of meekly and apologetically. And this jock who's about half his size is like, "Get out of my house, asshole!" It just didn't. It was so sort of stupid. One of my notes was that Jason's arsenal was quite comprehensive. Crossbow, man traps, machete, sleeping bag set on fire. That was quite good, but. Just, dull.
But all of the characters, weren't they? All of the characters were arseholes, bar the guy looking for his sister, the sister, and the girl who kind of helped him. All of them were just like complete dicks. Really annoying.
And it was almost like that thing of, and this is a weird thing to say, like, so they portray these teenagers behaving appallingly to each other and just in general, just being real entitled, sort of promiscuous, weed obsessed. Literally everyone in this film, it's like we've got to go and find this cannabis that's growing in the woods. Like, God, and it just, like, I remember being a teenager and I definitely had I was more interesting than these people. So it's almost like I feel it's like doing a disservice to teenagers, you know what I mean? Just totally, by making them all seem like absolute kind of hedonistic, selfish tossers. But maybe that's the point, because then we're supposed to not care when they get murdered. But then if we don't care, why, if we're not supposed to care about any of the people in it, what's the point of the film?
Yeah.
And by this point, we've had hilarious daft bonkers parodies like, Jason Takes Manhattan and Freddy vs. Jason crossovers. We've had Scream, which is obviously a complete self-aware parody of the whole slasher genre. The first Scream movie in particular is brilliant, and that's in over 10 years before this. So we didn't... What do we need this film for? It's not... doesn't really fulfill any need for me.
I get... well, it was a reboot, wasn't it? It was basically a reboot of the first kind of two films almost, wasn't it? Because obviously Jason was the main baddie in it.
Yes.
But you still saw the bit with his mother at the beginning. So I guess it was like a rebooted first two films. So maybe they were thinking, it can be successful again and we can just do sequels all over again. But I don't know. It was...
They didn't know.
It was really
this was
shit.
2009, and I know when we talked last year about Halloween, we quite enjoyed the Rob Zombie, not necessarily the second one, but certainly the first one, and also then the Halloween 2018 sort of sequel with old Laurie Strode in it and old Michael Myers.
Yeah,
I suppose maybe I would say that having watched both of these franchises to death now, I prefer Michael Myers to Jason.
I agree. Well, I was going to say, so maybe now is a good time to do my final pitch.
Please do. It's been a roller coaster, gore-soaked, machete-wielding, head-punching into a bin ride.
Because as much as some of these films were absolute shite, and the latest one in particular was rubbish, and I don't know how they'd reboot this franchise successfully. I'm not sure there's a place for it. But one thing I will say is I think of Friday 13th as being kind of like the Burger King to Halloween's McDonald's, or being like the Pepsi to Halloween's Coca-Cola. It's...
Or being the Snickers to Halloween's...
Mars bar. It's obviously...
Sorry, I was going to do that thing where I keep interrupting with, but I'm not going to do that joke.
Don't be a prick. That's the first time I called you that today. So even though it's a kind of a rip-off, a lesser rip-off, and it is a lesser franchise, it's, I still like a glass of Pepsi. And I still, for the most part, quite enjoyed watching Jason Voorhees, kill everyone. So I think you've got to put it into the Hall of Pain because, we haven't even talked about the video games. Splatterhouse, the guy in that is pretty much Jason Voorhees. There's the Friday 13th multiplayer game.
God, I bought that, I bought that and got rid of it. I played it for 2 minutes and immediately got rid of it because I realised that it was only online multiplayer and there was no way you could turn off the other people talking to you.
You can.
I'm sure you couldn't. I'm sure I googled it and you couldn't. And they maybe...
You have to do them individually before the match.
Oh. I had literally a little kid talking to me and I was like, this is a bit annoying, is weird. Yeah. Off. No, I can't be doing this is odd.
But anyway, so such a recognisable character. Yes, he's been in some shit films, but then so had Michael Myers. So, but I think I don't even know if the good outweighs the bad, to be honest, in this instance. But I think just purely because of how iconic, oh God, there we go again, how recognisable and for you ugly little shit, even though that was Freddy.
And for punching that bloke's head off.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think you've got to put him in there. He is, it's an institution, isn't he?
So I'll sum up your pitch just to play it back to you. So you called me a prick.
Yeah.
You told me most of the films were shit.
Yeah.
You said it was a lesser rip-off of Halloween, and most of those films were shit anyway.
Yeah.
And you said there's no place for this franchise in the modern world, and you don't know how it would be rebooted. So on that basis, I am going to allow Friday the 13th into the Hall of Pain. Because, it's like you say, it's almost impressive that this character, Jason Voorhees, the hockey mask, is so well known, despite the fact that I'm not sure that many people have even seen any of these films, and most of them are absolute garbage. But if you're ever motivated to sit through all 12 like we did, you will find little nuggets of really funny bits.
Yeah.
Some of them intentional, some of them not. So
but it's true. Actually, over the course of this episode, I've almost talked myself out of including. But you're right. It is impressive how he's managed to do that. So yeah. Despite
not being in a single good film, basically, there isn't one. I don't think that. I mean, they're good. They're good because they're funny or ridiculous. But I don't think there's one actually. Maybe Freddy versus Jason actually is a good film.
No, I agree.
So yeah, Jason Voorhees. Have you anything to say? Oh no, he doesn't say much. He doesn't speak. Joke. Bless him.
You could have left that silent for a bit longer, I think.
I can edit that in. See the wizardry of.
But he's in. Yeah.
He's in.
Yeah.
He's in. He's joining the pantheon of weirdos, and we might hear more.
Christ, that means we never have to watch.
God, I've never ever watched. Unlike Halloween, where I actually weirdly ended up wanting to watch the new one when it ever comes out. With these, I don't think I'll ever watch a Friday the 13th again.
And you know what? If Halloween was on TV, I'd watch it. The original Halloween.
Yeah.
Maybe not some of the sequels. The third one I might.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, with these, I'm not sure I would.
No.
I might. Do you know what? Actually, no. If Manhattan was on, I reckon I'd sit through it. Maybe not now. I'd need a little bit of a break. And Freddy versus Jason, definitely.
And maybe the sixth one as well.
Yeah, and maybe the first one, just
for posterity. Maybe. Well, so it's a cultural touchstone, isn't it? You know, what would the world be without Jason movies and their questionable morals?
Probably a better place, quite frankly.
Probably much better, more wholesome place where we weren't desensitised to murders and didn't cheer them. Well, on that unsavoury, disgusting note, anything else to add? We've got a little break now, I guess, from record. We're in lockdown, so we're doing this remotely. So what we might do is, I've got a couple of episodes with a couple of guests that we recorded a while back. So we might cough up one of those next to give you a break, Liam, and then maybe we'll reconvene in a hopefully post lockdown, so I can see your lovely face.
You ugly little shit. I bet he didn't even say that. I bet I remembered it wrong. It was probably like, you little prick. Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows? We'll fact check it. Like we often do on this show, we'll fact check it afterwards when it's too late.
When we've already put the show out, yeah.
Well, that's probably it from us then, isn't it?
Well, that was exhausting, that one, yeah.
I am spent. But yes, worth it. I feel like we've really contributed something to society by
absolutely
our selfless act of sitting through those many Jason films. It only remains for me to say our well-established and famous outro catchphrase, which is we haven't got an outro, so goodbye.
We just ramble on for a while and then
ramble on for a bit and then bugger off. See you soon.
See you soon.
Don't have nightmares, you ugly little shit. Thank you for joining us for another Dark Natter. Quickfire end credits. Thank you to Kevin MacLeod for his freely available music, which acts as our theme tune. Thank you to Liam, who never gets a plug on this end bit, so please Google Liam Martin and you'll find his dead good, entertaining, amusing, insightful video game reviews. Google John Richter, that's JONRICHTER. You'll find me books and my website and various other bits and bobs and side projects. And of course, stay tuned to this station, feed, podcast service, thingy for upcoming future episodes of Dark Natter. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.